Welcome to Inside the Walls with William Pasquale, brought to you by Perner Frederick Commercial Real Estate. Welcome to a new level of commercial real estate built upon relationships and proven results. Good afternoon and welcome to Inside the Walls with William Pasquale. Today we'll be speaking with Michael Casolo, Chief Revenue Officer at Unispace. With over 25 years of commercial real estate experience, Michael has established a reputation as a strategic problem solver, achieved through laser-focused relationship building. Previously with Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund founded by Ray Dalio, he oversaw the workplace environments for their million-square-foot portfolio. Prior to this, Michael held global business development leadership roles at Cushman & Wakefield, Jones Lang LaSalle, and where we met a long time ago at United Systems Integrators. And here's a quick video about what Unispace is all about.
The way we work has changed, which is why we believe it's time to turn the traditional model for workplace design upside down.
When we asked our clients how we could make life easier for them, we uncovered stress and frustration. When they have to work with multiple consultants, architects, designers, contractors, and builders, there's an inevitable loss of information. That means conflict and delay.
So we decided to bring it all together in one simple, streamlined process. We call it Think, Create, Make.
Think is where we put our global intelligence to work right from the start. We ask the tough questions to understand your business goals and then translate that into your physical space.
Working with you, we then create a workspace that unlocks the true potential of your environment. Our clients expect more from workplace design, so we continually push boundaries to imagine new ways to help people perform at their best.
Then we make it happen, without risk to your budget or schedule. We have over 35 agile, proactive studios around the world, ready to support your local teams. We're on the ground with the construction team. We're at your side in the boardroom, and we're working together to ensure consistency within and across every project.
Bringing these three things together in one seamless methodology needs a global team of local people who are your advocates at every stage. At Unispace, we're all here for just one thing: to help your business achieve its vision for the way it wants to work.
And here is Michael. How are you today, sir?
How are you, William? I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Really do appreciate that. I am sure that this will be a very well-watched show, considering this the nature of the topic and the nature of what this show is all about in the first place, about being inside the walls of real estate and business. So first thing, Michael, now you have an extensive resume in the commercial real estate industry on a global level, from a leadership perspective, that's second to none. Please provide us a little bit of background and information about yourself and what you've done in the industry.
Sure, happy to. First, you're being a little overly complimentary, but thank you nonetheless. I've had an interesting career. I've really enjoyed my career. I don't have any regrets in my career, which I think is probably the thing I'm most proud to say. But it's been an interesting career arc. If you look at where you and I first met back in my USI days, even before that, I'm an architect by background, worked as an architect in private practice, went from there to start the design and construction business of what we used to call a strategic alliance company, which has now become known later as outsourcing. Did that, went from there to the rest of the real estate service portfolio, or umbrella of services, if you will. Over facilities management and transaction management and lease administration, portfolio consulting, as well as the design and construction piece. And that's really where I did it at Staubach before we sold and merged into JLL. Spent 10 years between Staubach and JLL together, really in the global business development space, as you described, for the broad outsourcing, multi-X outsourcing services. Did that at JLL. When I left, I was chairing the Global Business Development Board, and then left to go to DTZ as they were getting ready to acquire Cushman & Wakefield, and built the global business there. But the real interesting thing was, if you look at the arc from design and construction, or architecture to design and construction to global outsourcing, back to the design and construction side, if you will, when I went to Bridgewater. And there, the opportunity came to me this year to join Unispace, which I was really excited about. It's a disruptive model in what would have been considered a traditional space. And it brought kind of my global business development experience to my design and construction passion. And I really saw that as being really the three legs of a pretty powerful stool between the global business development, the design and construction passion, and the really interesting and disruptive nature about what Unispace as a company was doing.
Well, and I asked this, speaking of Unispace and your background, what you're currently doing, you are the perfect guy to ask this question to. I asked the same question to Jerry Sweeney of Brandywine Realty Trust on a past interview. Every day, we're hearing about different options and thought processes about, out in the workplace about this pandemic and the resulting effect of what will happen in the workplace. Within the last decade, we've gone from, offices with a ton of private spaces a ton of spaces with private offices to an open landscape, and now also work from home. Asked a different way, it is December 31st, 2021, 11:59 p.m. We're presume that we have a vaccine and good therapeutics, because it sounds like we will, given the recent news from Pfizer and Eli Lilly.
Fingers crossed.
Exactly. In your opinion, what does the future of the workplace look like?
Well, the most cliche answer that I will give you to start is that it will be different. And the question is, how different, and different in what way? When we look at, we spend a lot of our time, as I mentioned, being kind of a company that thinks of itself from our, think, create, make approach as being disruptive, as looking at how do we do things differently for our customers. But we really want to base that on data. So we've done a lot of research in the last year as to what our clients and our prospects are thinking about for the future. It's what is it going to look like? When is it going to happen? And all of the rest. And we've really we've looked at the data that's come from that to try to be predictive, to try to look at the differences region by region around the globe. And I don't think there's one answer, William. As you know from your career, there rarely is one answer.
Right.
Things are going to depend by market. Things are going to depend on user type, by corporate type, and also by function. What happens for a back office function versus a sales function versus an engineering function versus pick something are going to be different. And what we really tried to look at is how people work. And one of the things that Unispace has done, which I know you've referenced and you've done some research on, I know, is our Propeller Concept. And Propeller really does look at what is the office going to be like when people come back to it.
So, when it comes to Propeller, how do you see that as helping companies make the decision as to what's next for them when they're coming back into the office?
Sure. So we've done it in two pieces. One is the concept of what Propeller is, which I'm happy to chat about, but also is a predictive analytics tool that we've developed that really allows us to look at, for a typical company or industry sector, for what an industry sector would look like based on percentages of different worker types, how those worker types worked through our database of data from our past work, and what it's expected to look like go forward. It allows us to model what those offices and what those workplaces are looking like down the road. And it allows us to use several different levers to look at a what if this and a what if that. And what we're finding is our customers are really enjoying that from the perspective of giving them data for making decisions in an unprecedented time. They can't really look to say, this is how we made our last 6 decisions. Therefore, that's how we're going to make decision on, to your point, December 31st, 2020 or 2021. What we're seeing, though, is that they want to understand what other companies are doing, or in this case, which is really the nuance, what other companies might be doing. Because again, no one's done it yet. Right. And that's really the difference here. Even when we look at, presenting our Propeller model and that customers are embracing, we can't show you 12 projects that have been built that way yet, because 12 projects haven't been built and people therefore haven't gone back into them. But what we've seen is how this is being received, how there are aspects of it which are very common sense, and there are aspects of it which are, a little thought-provoking. But the interesting thing to me is that the reception it's getting across industry sectors, not just technology, not just financial services, but consumer products, co-working companies, other flexible officing solutions, landlords. People are looking at this and saying, yeah, that makes sense. That's really how people are going to be looking at space in that, I know it's a phrase people don't like to use, but under the new normal. Or what I actually prefer is the next normal.
Okay. Now, one of the things I've heard, that I've heard about, or I've just heard repeated, is that, this age of pandemics that we're in, we've gone through, many different pandemics over the recent years, and that the workplace might need to adjust to the fact that this is going to continue happening even beyond COVID into other pandemics, to keep, so that we're not having to go doing, into the office, out of the office, shelter. I mean, as this, is broadcasting right now, we're seeing, the real beginnings of that second wave where it's starting to spike again. Nobody's talking about these massive shutdowns, but they are talking about scaling things back. Different states like New York today and New Jersey are making it so that, we're going to be like stopping interstate sports travel, indoor sports travel, limiting restaurants. So, this is going to be something that could continue, or is that something that you're looking at when you're talking to different groups about what they should plan for with their space?
I think we're even looking at it at a broader level, which is going back to my point earlier, things will be different go forward. The question is, what are the drivers for the difference? Is it, God forbid, another pandemic? Is it some other kind of global crisis? Is it an economic crisis? Is it a, societal issue? What are the things that will cause the next thing, if you will? And what we're seeing is if we can look at the space to maintain flexibility and agility, if we look at the space for why people need the space, and we look at ways to tech enable the space so that we can better monitor, using a micro example, pandemic cleaning, so that we can better monitor the health of people coming in and out of the space, so that we can make the user experience be that much better and have it be able to flex based on whatever that next thing is that happens out there. And, when I look back at my world pre-Bridgewater, even when I was at JLL and Cushman, I really focused a lot on the employee and user engagement and the employee and user experience in the workplace. And for me, that was where my passion was. And when I looked at what I was doing in that later part of my career, where I was really working with very progressive tech and financial services and media companies, and then others that came below them that you may not think about, but where people were really focused on what is the user experience. If you take that now, maybe user experience then was about, productivity and recruitment and retention. Maybe now it's about different things. Maybe it's about some of those things as well, but maybe it's also about, how comfortable do people feel in the office? Are they coming to the office for the right reasons? Are the right people coming to the office? Are people coming to the office because it's a better place to get their heads down work done? But are other because they can't do it at home because they're living in a small apartment with a partner or children or both? Or are they coming in to do their heads down work because it's just the way they prefer to work? So it's about looking at what are all those things, and then how can the workplace flex to accommodate that? And then if offices and companies are not building out to a 1-for-1 ratio, how do you manage that so that it's not a frustration point, hence a negative user experience?
Right.
And use the space and the technology and variety of prop tech tools to enable that.
Because, the workplace isn't just about, having a place to sit and work. It's a place for collaboration. It's a place for creativity, a place for social interaction. I mean,
that's actually a pretty good intro to Propeller, and that we really studied what do people use? What is the current workplace model, if you will? And we really see that there are 4 zones in an office. And it's interesting because all of us are now doing those same 4 things on our laptops, in front of our monitors, in our home offices, whether those are formal offices or whether it's a table in the kitchen. But there's a portion of most people's work that's about focus. There's a portion of most people's work that's about collaboration. Most people have a social aspect to work. And then there's a learning aspect to work. And now those 4 things vary on a day by day. They vary by industry type. They vary by job description. And frankly, they also vary by where you are in your career. that's sort of the traditional workplace model. Why do we build an office? It's for those four things in some ratio. And it's now when we look at where we are today, are those the reasons that people are going to come back to the office? And our Propeller tool and model says that really focus and collaboration is really can really be combined into thinking of, it's really about problem solving. And the social aspect and the learning aspect is really about community and innovation. So it's learning becomes innovation. Focus and collaboration becomes problem solving. And it's less centered around just the business goal, but it's also centered around the employee and user experience. And if you look at those things and you look at the way an office is typically laid out, and I'm not saying, old school perimeter offices and then some open plan in the middle, but even if you go to the further generations and versions of that, it's still probably not where we want to be for many companies as they go to the post-COVID workplace. And that post-COVID workplace really does start to think about, it's probably not the place where as many people go for heads down work. That's probably what you do mostly from home or from somewhere else outside of the primary workspace. You go there for you to meet, you go there to collaborate, you go there to innovate. And there still needs to be some capacity for those other things, but it really does drive a very different workplace.
Now, as companies and users of space are looking to come back into the office and they're looking to set their plans up, what do you think are like the three areas of focus that they need to be looking at now to determine that best plan of action when they're coming back?
Well, it's three things, really. As you said, you pointed out three. I would have given you three anyway, which are, first question is, when are they coming back? That's a big variable for many companies. Then it's who is coming back. But the big one for me is, why are they coming back? Because the why is going to drive what the space, it's going to drive the what. It's going to drive what does the space look like. And if you really look at those three aspects, when, who, and why, I think you get there. The when is going to have to do with obviously the COVID situation. It's going to have to do with vaccines and therapeutics, and when we come out of this next wave that we're in the middle of right now. It's going to be who is coming back. It goes back to what I was just talking about in terms of, are they going back for, is it the people that need to work in a heads down? Is it people that spend more of their time in person doing something that physically and tangibly cannot be done remotely? My daughter works in financial services, and she is on a team that has to actually process investment money that comes in hard checks. Can't be done remotely. So that's really the who and the when, and the why is, why are they coming back? Is it, again, this case can't be done physically from home? Is it that innovation and collaboration isn't happening? Are there resources that can't be provided remotely that need to be happening there? And then when all of those things are answered, you can really start to think about what that workplace needs to look like.
Now, do you see that maybe the amount of space that might be needed for an office user to be more or less, or just plain different now that we're in the era that we're in?
It's the safe answer, but I'm going to have to pick different, because again, it's going to depend on the company. It's going to depend on a company culture. Is the culture that we don't ever want someone to come in and not have a place to work? Well, in that case, we're going to have to either much more tightly manage through tech or whatever else, the occupancy patterns and the usage of the space, or we're going to have to provide more backup space. I don't think that that's where most people are going to end up going. So I think it's about figuring out what are we going to be presenting to our employees back in the office, and then let that drive the space. I think saying we're going to go 50% less, 20% less, 10% less, until we know, the who and the why, I think that's a premature thing to estimate.
And I would say that you're guessing that most companies are still just trying to figure that out at this stage of the game. Most companies haven't dialed that in yet, correct?
Exactly. We've looked at the pre-COVID and the post-COVID, use of those spaces that I talked about, the focus, the collaboration, the innovate, the social, and the learning. And we've looked to see, we balance them to say across our client interviews that we've done thousands of these interviews, it's to see in pre-COVID, what percentage of those things happened from home and what percentage of them happened at COVID, or post-COVID happened office versus home. And it's not a complete flip, but it's definitely a major evolution.
Now, given your background, I mean, you've been on the executive leadership teams, like I said, with USI, where we worked, Stahlback, JLL, Cushman, Genpack, with Bridgewater Associates. You've held like leadership positions on the board of Chlornet Global. My point is that you've been in this industry at the highest levels with a ton of experience. And I'm not just trying to flatter you, but I'm truly trying to, say that, you know what you're talking about. Given the dramatic impact of the result of as a result of this pandemic in our industry, what are the changes that are needed from a commercial real estate professional that are, going to need to be done? Like what do we need to do? And what are occupiers demanding from service providers right now?
I think we need to be nimble. I think we need to, I think that word is a bit overused, but I'm using it. I think we need to understand that the future is going to be about flexibility. Whether we say nimble, whether we say flexible, whether we say dynamic, it's certainly not going to be static. And so we have to be open and open-minded to what those things are going to be down the road. We need to, like our customers are needing to be, therefore we need to be data-driven. It goes back to the point I made earlier about how we've invested so heavily in, predictive analytic tools, because as people are making decisions in an unprecedented environment, their superiors, their people that they answer to are looking for data to support that decision. It's really hard. It's hard because it is truly unprecedented. So what things from the past can we combine together to maybe give us a picture of that different future? So I think the data-driven piece is really important. And the last one is what I said also earlier, which is it's about being user-centric. The reason space exists and the reason office space exists is for people to get together to do work. It really comes down to that. It's there for the users. Go back to some, in my facilities management outsourcing days, the whole reason it's not about managing the facility. It's about supporting the people that are using the facility. Everything else is peripheral to that. Even goes back to I was on a panel discussion several years ago for I think it was IFMA, and I was on a panel with a futurist who was actually at the time employed by Steelcase, and he put the very seductive comment out there of, why do we even need offices? Why should we even have offices? We don't need them. And I thought a lot about that. And that was a long time ago that panel existed. I think I was still at USI, William, when that happened. And I think about that comment by him a lot because it really does resonate. It goes back to my thing earlier, which is it's the why. It's why are we going back? Why do we need offices? Why do people go in? And when you can answer that, you can get to the right answers.
Wow. Just a very impactful episode with a lot of information about what the future looks like and what questions really do remain that need to be answered by a lot of different, corporations that are out there. Now, we have a segment on this show called Wisdom on the Wall. It's like, what's your credo? Words that you live by, words that inspire you in business, in person, or personally. What is that for you?
It's really simple. It's two things, two concepts, but I think they're important and mean even more when they're put together. It's be passionate and be authentic.
Be passionate.
It's that simple.
Be authentic. Absolutely.
I believe firmly that it's very difficult for anyone, or let me just speak for myself. I can't perform well when I'm not passionate about what I'm doing. And I've made some changes in my career at different points where I no longer had the passion to do the thing I was there to do. And could I have continued along the path? Absolutely. But it wasn't who I was. And that kind of gets to the next piece, which is be authentic. I like to think that I'm authentic. I like to think that the success, whatever success I may or may not have had in my career, is because others see me as being authentic. To me, those are my two credo. That's the credo.
Well, Michael, thank you again for taking time out of what I know is a very busy schedule right now.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Michael,
thanks for anyone watching for listening. Thank you.
Michael Casolo, Chief Revenue Officer of Unispace. Thanks everybody for joining in this week. Next week, we've also got another exciting episode, so we will see you next week.